Hey, welcome to episode 157 of the Titanforge podcast. I'm Dratnos, joined by Tuttles
Yo, what's up? We're back.
and Trell.
Good morning.
Good morning for what is likely to be the final Titanforge, perhaps of the year. Even we're here this week so again we're off for the next week or two or three, some amount depending on how long the Race to World First goes. Tuttles and myself will be busy casting the Echo Race to World First and also, raiding on our own guilds.
There's no way that we have Sepulchre happen again.
Surely they wouldn't do that to us another time, right?
Surely we'll have an episode on the 29th, right? There's no way we're gonna get stuck. All right, whatever, it's fine. Maybe this is the last episode of the year.
Yeah, we'll see. Either way, that's the plan going forward. So maybe this will be the last episode in your feeds for a little bit. This week we're going to talk about kind of some of the news that's been going on, and also some of our predictions and thoughts about the raid as it's in the future. And then we can look back and see how this all sort of turned out and how the raid actually looks. Because I don't know, it's shaping up to potentially be a pretty interesting one. There's a lot of decisions they've made differently this time compared to how raids have normally happened. And of course, the start of an expansion, there's always a huge amount of stuff that we don't know. So yeah, I think it'll be pretty cool. Either way, let's see. We can start off, I guess, by talking about the gearing that is happening right now for players in both Race to World First. Oh, good.
I have a question. Does this expand? I swear, this expansion more than ever, it feels like if you're not in the loop with really like weird stuff in regards to like super rares or Cobalt Assembly rep and stuff like that, like being in the loop, it feels like has been so impactful, more so than basically any other patch, at least, where I feel like just knowledge and playing 10 hours a day is very, very important for like being in the know, but at the end of the day, it's also not really much of a gain.
I agree with you. I think that more than ever, if you have sources of information, multiple sources of information, then you just naturally find out about things that are important quicker than other people. And especially if you're ahead of the game on Wowhead. If you're ahead of the game on something before Wowhead posts it, you know you have good sources. And that's usually the best point to be at the beginning of an expansion so you can get the gear.
Oh yes, like my YouTube channel.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dude, no joke though. I've actually
it's on my ass.
Sending people to y'all's YouTubes. I'm like, just watch whatever they post. Like my more casual friends, I'm like, check out what they post and just go farm that until it gets fixed, and you'll be like on top of the game.
Yeah. I don't know. It would be the kind of thing that like I would have a pretty big problem with it if this was like the mythic equivalent item level gear that was, if this was how you got that, right, was like learning the right farm, doing it for the day before Blizzard nerfs it, and then it, and then anybody else can't get it, right? Like people that have 380 plus gear from Trial of Elements and Trial of Flood that now has been nerfed, so you can't get that. People who got their Rathian farmed in 6 hours instead of 10. People who got their Cobalt Assembly farmed in 30 minutes instead of 2 hours, right? Like if that was the difference between being mythic geared and being not mythic geared, I'd have a big problem with it. The fact that it's the difference between being like 380 and being 370 coming out of this week, that feels like a big deal right now. It feels like it's a really important thing to have done, but like by next Thursday, you're not going to know from looking at a character which one did all this stuff. If somebody could have 50 extra hours of playing this week versus 5 extra hours of playing next week, the person who does 5 extra hours of next week play will be more geared as a result of that. So
I think for me,
it is weird,
so
though.
Weird. Yeah. I feel like I just generally, so I play the game a lot. I feel like I generally don't know what the hell is going on most of the time, and then somebody is just like, "Oh, did you hear about this thing?" And I'm like, "What do you mean?"
Yeah, they just like link some rare or some item, and it's like, "Oh yeah, this one's just been discovered," and then and it's big 382s. Yeah.
I think it's funny. Like, I'm not even into farming rares. I haven't really done it hardly at all. I'm 376, which is probably above average, but like lots of my guildies are 382, 381, way up there with like maximum potential, full rep on Rathion, full rep on Maruk, 20 renown 25, stuff like that, And I'm like, this is pretty funny to like watch them all shift to what they're farming immediately when new information comes out, and it's just like an information war. Like imagine this kind of expansion without the internet. There'd be like 3 people doing these farming things, and everybody else in the world would still be 370 or 371.
I mean, you wouldn't even be able to
Reload
connect
is
to the servers.
Real. Because we didn't have the internet.
Yeah, no internet. But yeah, you're the Wowhead effect of like Wowhead article comes out and then that part of the world map just the dragons like swooping in. Yeah. Like
It's
where
so
that
funny.
yeah. New super rare
What's even
discovered.
more funny is that Blizzard nerfs it almost every single time, like a few hours after the Wowhead post. Just that is the best part.
Yeah, the super rares haven't been nerfed, but almost all the others like the Obsidian Key, the Cobalt Assembly rep, Dirt,
Trial of Elements,
Trial of Flood. Those have
Yeah.
all taken nerfs. Yeah, the super rares though, those got a tweet from the World of Warcraft account. So
Siege on Dragonbane Keep.
yeah,
Farming dirt.
yeah. Now some of these like to me it seems like the part where rares had no loot lockout and were fully tradable gear. Obviously that had to go, right? Like that was just giga weird. The part where like shard hopping Siege of Dragonbane Keep was the best way to do that, like being in a raid, clearing it really fast, and then shard hopping, clearing it really fast over and over again. That part was also really weird. That part should have gone. All the other stuff, I don't think the other stuff should have gone. I think I think it's worse to have those farms be in the game and then remove them after a day or two so that only the people who learned about them first get the gear from them. I think that is generally bad for something where it's like, oh, this Trial of Elements, we think the item level is 8 item levels higher than it should be. It's like, okay, if the item level is 8 item levels higher than it should be, that problem gets worse, not better, if you make it so that only the people who got there first get to keep those items.
We have a tinfoil hat theory in our guild about like what happened. So during the beta, like I don't want to say pretty late into the beta cycle, but like later into the beta cycle, they rebalanced M0 gearing and they rebalanced a decent amount of like the gearing sources, like how much item level you were getting. And we think that they didn't rebalance like world quest drops, like reputation stuff gained, like drops from rares and stuff like that. So they're dropping approximately 10 item levels higher than they should be because previously M0s were giving like 382 loot. But now if they're only giving 372 loot, then that's going to be a problem, right?
Yeah, they were 382 on the
That's
dungeon
got to
journal
be correct.
early.
Because
yeah.
why would they make Mythic Zeros not the pinnacle of loot before the season starts? You know, like maybe I could see like maybe the Cobalt Ring or one other item being higher than M0, but only like by a few item levels intentionally. I swear the rest is completely unintentional and it just got scaled out of proportion. And then they had to keep it because too many people had that high item level already.
Yeah, I am also fairly confused about how it worked, but again, it's like it's the kind of thing where if this was an important system, I would be pretty upset about it. But the fact that like jockeying for position here means you're plus or minus 3 item levels, that makes it important for like race to world first guilds. It makes it somewhat important for guilds like our guilds, but like it doesn't. It means absolutely nothing at all anywhere below that level, and that's like that makes it a lot less of than stuff like Korthia rep or Torghast farms, where it's like, oh, this is like really important for anybody that's trying to do any heroic plus content.
It matters for like 10 hours on the first day, like while you're going into raid the first time, maybe, right? Like that's the only time it really matters.
And there are there are some guilds that matters for, right? Like that that means an extra. I mean that could mean the difference between world first and world second, right? Like that's big for Echo and Liquid. It's not big for much else.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I swear it only impacts the top like 20 guilds in the world that are going to step into the raid immediately without farming anything else first and doing weeklies or Mythic Plus, or normal raid even. And everybody else will have those 8 hours, 3 hours, even if you're coming home from work late in the day before your raid, and you'll probably just get the gear within that time period that you would have got these first 2 weeks anyway.
Yeah. I mean, you'll still like some of these things you'll still be wearing for the first couple of days, probably, right? Like if you farmed Rathian Cloak, that's staying on you probably for first couple days, unless you get a lucky cloak drop where you're pushing up above 16s and farming a bunch of keys.
It's 398. Yeah, like I think you're gonna be wearing that for a little while.
That thing
I don't know.
Maybe doesn't survive the whole week, but it survives a bit.
But it survives a day or so, probably.
Yeah, I mean it's not like you'll drop something in all
farm...
14 of your slots in the first day either.
You have to hit you have to hit a cloak after you've pushed the keys up to a point where you're going to be able to get a cloak, right? Or you just get, for some reason, you get awarded one from raid, because like we don't even have PL in raid anymore, right?
Yeah, those cloaks
like a
and
massive-
the raid cloak drops are going to
True.
the people that didn't farm Rathian, and
Yeah,
there's going to be
exactly.
drama
That's-
about that in guilds.
That's why I didn't farm it.
Yeah.
So I can get the. No,
Right.
but seriously, like 398s come from 15s.
Yeah.
And I think most people in the top several hundred guilds will be able to do 15s very quickly. I think the average player might get up to 15s by the end of the week, and a lot of people will be farming 20s as well pretty early in the week, maybe
Yeah.
midway through the week.
20s are going to start to be difficult because like if you don't have like full tier sets and stuff like that, like you have to have item level to be able to compensate. Like we were able to do it at 392 on the beta, but we had tier sets to be able to compensate. If you're like 400 item level or whatever, then you'll be able to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the kind of thing where it's like, it's possible, but it's from players that are like rank 1 title level M+ players that were doing that on beta at that item level.
Unless you're Zen-Kiki abusers, which in that case
Yeah.
you're not able to do it.
Well, those people, yeah, of course, they don't have Shrouded Hero, so.
Oh, it is worth mentioning though that you get the same loot, end of dungeon loot out of 19s as you do 20s. So you actually only have to farm 19s for 4
Yeah,
bucks.
although Great Vault's better from a 20, so you want to do your
Yeah,
8
you wanna do
20s
120.
if you can. But
Oh, yeah, you're right.
yeah,
I guess you want to do 8.
if you can.
There's no shot you do
Yeah.
20s.
Okay, we have seen another change coming in that is regarding the BOE items from the Mythic Raid in the first few weeks. When Vaults of the Incarnates raid opens next week, enemies inside will occasionally drop bind on equip loot as in previous raids, which it's not just from the enemies inside, right? It's from like the mini bosses specifically this tier, I think. But
yes,
yeah.
they did change that this tier.
it's like loot locked mini boss loot that drops a certain amount of BOEs, but in Mythic Raid, they will be bind on pickup instead for the first few weeks. Once a few weeks have passed, we'll revise the items to drop as BOEs, but it will not change already acquired soulbound gear back into BOE. Only the new drops will be BOEs. So at some point, presumably, I guess after the Race to World First, maybe after another couple of weeks, that will change again. This has different effects on different levels of play. It means that in the Race to World First, the gold spent on BOEs is going to drop, although buying socketed and avoidance heroic BOEs is still big value. Those things are still going to be worth quite a bit.
Yeah, why not block heroic BOEs for a few weeks too? I don't get that.
I thought whenever I first read this, I thought they were blocking all BOEs.
Yeah.
Well, because when like a regular player runs a raid, getting a BOE drop and being able to sell it on the auction house is like a big part of it. I don't know. That's like
Yeah, true.
That's what those things do. That's why they're there. But then they're targeting just the mythic means that it doesn't hit too many of people that, like in those guilds, usually the BOE drops are done by the guild anyways, not by the person they drop for.
Do you think that buying gear like that off the auction house is healthy?
I mean, when it's
Just
mythic
generally for the
BOEs,
game, right?
yeah,
Like-
the mythic BOE, it does make the game awful. You could say pay to win or like sales incentivized, very incentivized to run mythic sales as a guild to stock up a guild bank to be able to make these purchases. Yeah. So I like the fact that it's going to mean there's less stuff to spend your gold on as a guild.
I mean, I think that with the profession revamp, this makes sense, right? Because professions, they're looking to push professions to be more impactful long term, from like gearing options. And I mean, one of the ways that they can do that is by making professions more impactful early, and like not allowing people to have mythic BOEs like this is one way of being able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, if there were BOEs, you would wear profession gear and BOEs, not instead of.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Depends
yeah.
on stuff.
True.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, like the profession gear is looking real good either way.
Yeah.
Yeah. There are a couple of theoretical cringe ways that you could farm mythic BOEs depending on how this works. So,
What do you mean?
let me spin you a tale of how... First of all, let me spin you a tale of how the mythic BOE farm could have worked when they were BOE. You kill Aranog in a group of 20 mains. Let's say that unlocks 2 or 3 mini bosses that drop BOEs. You bring in 20 alts that are good enough to kill mythic trash, which is not a high bar. They kill those lieutenants. Then they zone out. You get those BOEs. You soft reset the raid. You bring in 20 more unsaved alts. You keep doing that. that was a way to do Mythic BoE farming with Lieutenant loot, assuming that Lieutenant death status wasn't saved on the lockout, but per character instead, which I think is how it's usually been done.
That's how it has been.
Yeah. Then that would have been a way to Mythic BoE farm at the price of unsaved alts getting saved to your lockout. Now instead, the fact that it's bind on pickup, what you can do is 20 mains kill Aranog, 2 mains and 18 alts go and kill all the lieutenants. Then you zone out, swap in a different 2 mains and a different 18 alts, kill all the lieutenants, and you funnel all these now bind on pickup loot drops from the lieutenants to those mains in each of the runs.
So, do you think the Echo or Liquid will be doing this?
I mean, if that
Or Mythic.
works, I think it's a good use of time. I don't see why you wouldn't do it.
It's better than It's literally better than killing. It's as good as killing mythic bosses.
Yeah, I mean, you get a lot of gear. You get a lot of gear from doing that if that works. So, the solution to this would be to save the mini bosses to the lockout rather than to the characters, which would also have the upside then of us not having to kill the mini bosses again every time we zone back into a raid on the next raid day. So that'd be kind of cool. But if it doesn't work that way, then I think this would be a way
You would armor stack the splits too.
You wouldn't armor stack. No, you would. Oh wait, do BOEs drop for armor, or do you think they just drop from a pool?
Well,
yeah, that's a good question.
BOEs previously only dropped from armor, right?
Yeah, then you'd armor. You would either do an armor stack or like a split of opposite armors, depending on which type it was. Yeah,
It's probably group loot, right? I would assume it is.
yeah, I don't know.
I assume it's group. I assume it's like group lootable or tradable, like inside of the raid. If you're eligible to get it.
If it's not tradable within the raid, then that would fix the incentive to do this as well. If you couldn't, if it was completely untradeable gear, but that would also be that would lead to bad feelings when it just drops.
Can you
in
imagine
normal groups or not normal, but like
hypothetically, of
regular
course,
guilds?
can you imagine us trying to cast trash farming?
Trash splits? Oh, I cannot just imagine that. I'm actively rooting for it. It would be fun.
Rooting for it. I hope that I'm asleep at that point where we're casting trash.
I just want to. I want to be the person who gets to explain that to the Twitch chat about why they're doing that.
Well, the first time, yeah, it's fine to explain to Twitch chat what the hell they're doing. The 7th time they zone back into the raid instance is the point where your mind kind of melts.
I'll pull out a whiteboard and we'll list all the BOEs that can drop and be like, here's the ones they're going for. Here's what they're hoping to see.
So let me write this down. We need a whiteboard.
Yeah. I've heard
markers.
I've heard there will be potentially ways of doing that. We'll see. We'll see.
Great. All right,
those are my favorite moments to tune in to you guys casting, because whenever you're doing some like really degenerate casting, like the 5th hour of casting trash in a row, I tune in and you're just talking about the craziest stuff. Like all topics have been crossed out. You're just at the bottom of the barrel, just talking about literally anything possible. It's so funny to me.
Halandras broke us both. I'm pretty convinced.
Last year was so good for that because we got there, on like the 6th or 7th day when it was the 4th day of Halandras, and then the race continued for another 11 days. And degeneracy just.
People are just like, how do you even keep talking about the raid? I go, I don't know. I haven't talked about the raid in like 10 days.
Yeah. Well, you see, yeah. Okay. In other news, the World Quest situation has been one that has received and then reverted a change before it went live. World Quests currently this expansion are largely on a bi-weekly cadence, but there are Pet Battle and War Mode World Quests that are instead on a daily reset. But the bi-weekly ones, Blizzard made a post that said, we're going to change this, and we're actually going to bring it over to dailies instead based off of player feedback. And then they made another post about 10 hours later that was like, upon further review, we're not going to do that. Following feedback and internal discussions, they want to avoid making world quests feel mandatory, but they still want to offer them as a worthwhile option for players who are looking for things to do on a given day, but they're going to try and find other ways to accomplish that without impacting crafting too much or generating a great deal of concern for those who don't already have or want a daily routine.
I actually really like the fact that they walked this back. I think that, like...
Oh, yeah.
World quests don't feel like very satisfying. I think that world quests being on bi-weekly is totally reasonable. Like world quests are the most fun at the very beginning of the expansion. Beyond that, world quests are kind of meh content just generally. And I think that like them being on a bi-weekly cadence for the first, I mean, we had it for like a week and a half, and then we had it like for a week, and then they announced this. I was like, I really like the fact that it was on a bi-weekly cadence. It was a lot more fun that way.
It's just so much more flexible for everyone with hard time commitments that they can't get around. Because I remember in BFA when they first started doing this, where there'd be like an 8-hour world quest starting at like midnight or something, and there's no way I was gonna be able to do that, and it was super important to do for player power. And I was like, well, that's just kind of unfair, you know?
Yeah, Legion had those with the Warden Towers. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that too. But I was gonna ask, like, what feedback made them change it back to daily at first? Like, where did they hear that? You know, like every feedback I saw before that on Twitter or elsewhere was like, we love biweekly world quests.
Yeah. So I imagine that this comes from people who did their world quest swoop or whatever, because that's kind of like something that is obvious to do when you open up your map. And then they finish that, and then there's nothing on their map, and then there's nothing on their map the next day, and then there's nothing on their map the next day, right? And they're like, okay, I want stuff to do. And I actually sort of empathize with this. Like, if you think about what we're doing without world quest swoops, right? Is like, we're doing hunts, we're doing flying around killing rares, right? Like, we're doing AFKing the community feast. Like
AFKing the hunts.
These are sources of the same thing that people that come from the world quest, right? Of like rep largely, right? Dirt farming.
Yeah,
these are
true.
like sources of rep, primal chaos, 372s, 376s, 382s, right? Are those things that we're doing now better or worse than them being world quests instead? I think I'd prefer it if it was if world quests were available more commonly instead as well. But I do get like the thing about the world quests is there's a large set of people that will feel bad if world quests expire that do not feel bad if they haven't killed Gnarls on a given day, right? Or they haven't killed Cauldron Bearer or whatever his face is, despite the fact that it's functionally the same thing, right? Either way, you're missing out on a little bit of rep, a chance of good gear, that kind of stuff. But the one of them makes people feel bad, the one of them doesn't, so that's why there's this kind of pushback about having the world quest reset fast.
I actually think that Mr. GM had a great tweet the other day. He was talking about the Primal Storms, and he was asking basically why the Primal Storms weren't released. I feel like that would have been something that should have happened on expansion launches. The Primal Storms be released, because for one, I mean he outlines in the tweet. Basically, it's like the gear from the Primal Storms is going to be obsolete basically on launch, and on top of that too, like there are like crafting profession recipes and stuff like that are gated behind the Primal Storms that it's just kind of weird that they're not unlocked right now. And it's like, I think like the Elemental Lariat recipe and stuff like that is gated behind it, and so you're gonna have to go and do that after like all of the content unlocks. And it seems like now would have been a great time to be doing these storms. It's like that's more optional content that you could be doing like for fun, right?
That would have been nice this week, I think. Yeah, and also the Elemental Lariat is like the embellished jewel crafter neck for those that don't know.
Yeah, it's when you hear embellished, it means the crafted gear can but does not always have the unique equipped embellished 2 tag. So everybody can wear any amount of crafted pieces, but you need the sparks to make them, and you can only have 2 that are embellished. Some come pre-embellished, which the Elemental Lariat is one of them, and others have embellishment slots where you can but don't have to put in your own embellishment, most of which seem kind of bad compared to the ones that items like Elemental Lariat have by default. So
I think like the only like real good one for DPS is like the potion. Oh gosh,
yeah, there's potions last 50% longer.
Yeah, that's the one. What's it called? Yeah. Hold on, let me. I'm finding the name.
My potion absorption inhibitor. Is that it?
Yes, that's the one. Yeah, the potion inhibitor. That's exactly what it is.
Is that engineering? Which one is that?
I don't know. You can put it on almost any slot, but I don't know who crafts it.
Yeah, I mean, I know for Moonkins, you want like Lariat plus like potion inhibitor on ring.
Yeah, there's like a weapon one that's like physical. If you're dealing physical damage and you you can embellish your weapon to do more physical damage or something. So
Adorned Fangs, yeah.
Yeah, that one might. I don't know I don't know how that one sims or anything, but yeah.
There's the arcane weapon proc that I know sims decent, like really high on single target and starts to fall off on AoE.
Do you know what that's called? I know that my best is called bronze grip trappings it drops from the raid, so I can't get it yet.
That's the one, the bronze grip trappings.
Yeah, that one's like super bis for a lot of melee, I assume.
Well, was turbo bits on single target, right? And it just falls off an AoE because the proc isn't that great.
Sorry
Yeah.
guys, I gotta recraft my gear between each of these bosses. I gotta change the embellishment. Sorry guys.
Can you proc
Can
an
you summon
inspiration
me?
proc?
Yeah.
Can you proc an inspiration procs? I need to get this quality 5.
Yeah.
Speaking of embellishments, is there a list anywhere yet of all the embellishments? Does anyone have that?
There's the like the craftable optional reagents, or the ones that are just like from the pre-crafted gear.
I guess all of them, since they're all in the same pool of two
Yeah.
maximum, right?
So you can kind of look at it if you look at the Spark of Ingenuity Wowhead page, and then you see all the things that are crafted. Like you can mouse over and see like, okay, this one's pre-embellished, right? It's got an effect, and then like this one doesn't have an effect, and it's got a add embellishment spot. But you can't actually see which embellishments go on this slot. But if you click through on that add embellishment, you can see all of the like crafted embellishments.
Oh, that's nifty.
Yeah.
I didn't know that was a page.
Although it looks
Yeah,
like
but-
this doesn't have. Oh, actually, it looks like this only shows the ones that would go in there. Yeah, because this doesn't have the weapon ones. So, yeah.
I think that it's important to note that like what Dretna said early on though about like all of the high item level stuff requiring Spark of Inspirations, but not all of them having embellishment effects is important to know, because like you're especially early on you're going to want to have embellishment effects like be some of the top priority of things that you are focusing on getting.
Yeah, your first 2 or 3 sparks, right? 3 if you're gonna make a two-hander. You probably want to have embellished effects on, and then after that, you can recraft the embellishments onto different things and turn those items into base items if you want a new embellishment. But you can't add a third embellished piece.
This crafting system confuses the shit out of me.
It
by
is
the way.
it is
it's a lot.
convoluted. That is for
It's
sure.
very
Yeah.
convoluted.
I hope it's good for people who enjoy doing professions long term, because I sure as hell do not understand it.
Yeah, I've been trying to understand it recently, and it's been I don't know. I will say it's like it is kind of cool for there to be a system with this level of depth to it in the game, but yeah, it is a lot, and there are some things in there that are just like the fact that you can't put a minimum quality on a public work order is really frustrating. I think that's a huge
Yeah.
inhibitor to people using
True that.
those.
There
Yeah.
was somebody, I will not name names, but somebody was requesting a Spark of Inspiration craft of a piece of gear, and they just slammed rank 1 quality on it and took the commission.
I mean, yeah, that's what you do in the public work. If you don't do that,
I
somebody
would
else is going to do that
maul-
immediately afterwards. Like the way the public work orders work is if you can hit start order, you're going to do it, right? Like there's
Yeah,
no
you're
reason
just gonna
not
hit start
to.
order, collect your commission.
Yeah.
I'm taking my plus whatever 5 crafting on JC.
Yeah,
May as well.
yeah, it's set up in a way to heavily incentivize that. And I get like the whole like providing your own reagents thing. I think providing all the reagents always in the public orders makes sense, but I do think that you should be able to require a minimum quality.
I agree. So I 100% agree with that.
All right.
I think something else I should add to that while we're on the topic is
Yeah.
being able to do multiple of the same crafting order in one click.
Yeah.
So like if you want 9 of crit verse gems, you have to make 9 different crafting order or work orders, which I did yesterday. I was like, really? This takes forever.
Yeah.
And you can't buy the gems on the auction house. They're BOP now, so you have to work order them.
That is a huge pain. Huge pain indeed. And the goal is to like by introducing that friction, they make it so that everybody has to like find a crafter, right? And like that I guess is a good thing, but man, I don't know. It is really annoying at the like when you are hitting create order 7 times or whatever. It's a huge pain.
Oh, also, are y'all servers? Do they have lots of work orders on them?
Like there's very few. The only public orders that stay up are the ones for like recipes nobody has yet. Other than that, the work order there are way
Yeah.
more people trying to craft than there are people creating work orders. Which it's because there's the weekly quest to fill work orders, but there's
Yeah,
not a
do 5
weekly
work
quest
orders.
to put up work orders. So maybe Blizzard should add one of those too. Like if you're an
I think that's
alchemist, it's
probably a
like,
good idea.
hey, put up some. Why don't you work order some of these leatherworking things for our alchemy guild?
I feel like
Yeah.
they may also need to do this in the future where they shard together a few servers worth of the work order system, because some servers are just barren on the work orders.
Does your server suck?
I mean, all
Yeah,
servers are like
it's-
that. It's not a population thing. It's like a ratio problem, right? It's every server just has way more people that are trying to hit start order than there are people that actually have a demand to craft any specific item.
What are your guys' guilds doing?
Yeah.
We're doing almost all of our crafting in-house. We have people set up to craft very specific stuff, and it's like we're doing basically all of our crafts in-house. Are you guys doing that, or are you guys trying to source some of it from the public?
Yeah,
We're doing it in house, pretty much everything.
we have a spreadsheet. We got all of our crafts lined up. Although we're collaborating with some friends and stuff on server, making sure that we've got all our bases covered. Yeah.
This is actually a really good plug to guilds that have multiple raid teams. Like my guild has a ton of people in it because we have 2 raid teams that do pretty well in Mythic, and that way we have lots of crafters. Luckily,
Yeah.
My guild's got a lot of people who enjoy crafting professions.
All right. We also have some news about Twitch drops, which are beginning on Twitch in 7.5 hours at the time of recording this, but if you're listening to this later, they're already happening or potentially already over. Twitch drops are beginning with this Gear Up for the Race to World First drop. This is a really long time to watch as well. So it's from December 9th to 13th. And if you watch for 8 total hours, you'll get a pet for the first 4 hours and then a mount for the next 4 hours. You have to click claim on the pet before you can start earning credit towards the mount as well. So make sure you do that. And then you can get both of these nifty little cosmetics. They do come from anybody that's streaming WoW in the Twitch, like in the category World of Warcraft, as long as they haven't like opted their channel out of drops, which means basically any streamer in the WoW category is going to have these drops enabled. Then, on December 13th at 3 p.m., that drop will end, and a new drop will begin called the Race World First drops for this Perpetual Purple Firework toy. And that drop will run for the next 2 weeks, and it will only be available from basically any streamer from Liquid, BDGG, Echo, Method, or Version. So the Race to World First guilds and BDGG, Method, and Aversion are all eligible to watch for...
Holy shit, what the hell?
dang,
Shots
shots fired.
Are all eligible to watch for...
What's the reason for this violence on our show?
And yeah, you can see the huge list here of each of these, but it's basically anybody in any of those guilds. Not their like, I guess there's just any of the people rating in there. So that will get you this firework toy, and that one is 2 hours only. So
I saw some drama surrounding this, right? Because initially the firework toy was announced as like select streamers are going to be able to have this firework toy drop, and we didn't really know much more about it than the select streamers. And now it comes out that the select streamers are only Race to World First people, and then some content creators I've seen are upset that it's only Race to World First people that have this drop enabled.
Yeah, first of all, I think it was pretty reasonable to predict this. If you were like a content creator, like looking at the drops and they were like, there's this one for anybody in the category, and then there's this one for anybody who signs up, and then there's this one, details TBD on that later, and it starts on the same day as the Race to World First. Like, okay, it was pretty obviously going to be a Race to World First drop. That being said, I think if you just look at this, like, in terms of hours, there's a pet and a mount that you need to watch 8 hours within 4 days for, and anybody in the category can get that. And then there's a toy that you need to watch 2 hours for over 2 weeks, right? Like, which of these is going to lead to more views in the category, right? From people looking for this? Like, by far the bigger push here is going to be the pet and the mount. You have to watch 8 hours of streams over only 4 days to get that, right? That's 2 hours a day. Whereas this one is like 10 minutes a day for a toy instead of a pet and a mount. So I would say like this one's a way bigger drop, the one that's for anybody.
Yeah, I think it's I don't know. The drama stemmed from the fact that it was just like all of the viewers are already consolidated in the Race to World First, and it's like why do they need more? But I think that this is actually a pretty good way of incentivizing and helping promote the Race to World First without directly getting involved with like becoming a broadcast partner for the Race to World First on Blizzard's end. I think this is actually
that's actually
good.
pretty smart. That is smart. They just like gave them a little behind the back gift to the Race to World First.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and because they were doing that drop, they then felt like they wanted to help everybody as well. Like they added in after the fact this drop, this like big drop before the Race to World First, the Gear Up for the Race to World First one. That as long as you're able to stream during those days, I'm pretty sure if you're not a Race to World First streamer, like this is still going to be plus money for you versus the other way around. Because like you said, the Race to World First already eats up a lot of the views on Twitch. I mean, it does depend a little bit on what kind of streamer you are, but the Purple Firework Tour is it's only 2 hours over 2 weeks that that you're going to lose to those marginal viewers that would maybe go to watch a different stream because of the drop.
I don't know about you guys, but I don't stream during the Race World First anyways, because the whole entire section is basically just Race World First viewers. It is not worth streaming, at least for how I view it. It's like not even worth streaming that much anyways.
Yeah, I mean, I still usually hit start streaming during that time, but it's definitely like just
just for fun.
Yeah, it's
everyone's definitely watching the race.
The race is the big thing that's going on then, and yeah, I think that this is a positive for pretty much everybody, like any sort of viewer or streamer. I think the one downside is like maybe those 8 hours are going to be rough for people. Like watching 8 hours over 4 days is this one might be one of those drops that you actually should make sure you like AFK drop it if you're not going to be around at your computer for these days. Just leave your computer on a WoW stream on one of these December 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th to get the...
It's also such an awkward time period because that's the 4 days before the season starts are like the most dead contentless days there are of WoW, I feel like.
I'm traveling most of those days. I don't even know if I'm going to stream, really.
I mean, I wasn't gonna stream at least the Saturday, but now I'm gonna. Stream's gonna be on all day. The people got to be watching for 8 hours during that time frame.
Drago's gonna hit the ad break button on CD.
That happens automatically. I'm too stupid to remember to press that button.
Well, Dratnus is not a man of the people, and will run manual ads on top of his auto ads.
Oh yeah, we gotta milk the people before they all those fickle viewers leave for the Race to World First streams.
Unloyal.
Yeah, disloyal. I hate them. Anyways, let's move on to our tip of the week before we move into talking about our Vault of the Incarnates. We just got a couple of like grab bag Vault of the Incarnates topics to cover. My tip of the week is, and I sort of alluded to this earlier, since 50 hours of gameplay this week is worth less than 5 hours next week, you should look for activities you can do now that aren't in World of Warcraft that will save you time in World of Warcraft next week. For instance, doing your laundry, taking a shower, cooking some extra food, doing some meal prep, going to the grocery store. Any of these sorts of activities that you can do once and then not have to do them for all of next week. These are good ideas to do so that you can then have more time when there's actually M+ and stuff to do.
Tro, should we tell him?
Yeah, I think you're supposed to take a shower during the Race to World First as well, Dragonflight.
You can bank them.
Camera.
You can bank them. It's like the alchemy transmute CD thing. You can do 10 days at once, and then you're good. You're good for 10 days.
Your shower does not blow up when you are doing the alchemical.
Mine sometimes does.
Speaking of which, how many times have y'all's alchemy blown up on you first try? Mine's
all the time.
Times.
I'm alchemy level 25, and I just got enough points in the thing to give me the potion. I stopped doing alchemy.
I'm alchemy 100. No big deal.
Because I too can read a guide.
I cheated on the first day or the first couple days when that worked.
You just get banned.
Wow, I'm reporting you.
Yep.
You probably had a bunch of liquid courage saved up too, huh?
Yeah, I went over to the Western Plaguelands. I was looking to see if there were any quests I could accept there that would make it better, but couldn't find any.
Oh, man.
Dude, by the way, we missed this. We didn't really talk about this. I cannot believe that people who got banned for the aiding the Accord quest didn't get their items removed. It is unbelievable that they didn't get their items removed. And
Wait,
I'm actually...
really?
Yes! There is a lot of people with screenshots of them just having 402 items.
Yeah, so...
Oh my god, man.
You can have a 405 item, honestly, right now, if you've done a renown grind. But the 402s, I think, only came from that bug dating the Accord stuff, right? I guess maybe you could have one from an authenticating the Accord if your character is turbo juiced right now. But yeah,
well, they only got 3-day bans too, right?
Yeah.
Yes. And didn't get their items removed. Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. My tenfold theory extends to that as well. I think that to revert that many items to like to change them in their databases would just like require something that they don't have or something. And maybe that's why they didn't do it.
You remember the beginning of BFA when people were able to loot their chest and they reverted all of those items? They definitely can.
Oh, they did? Okay, they do
Do
have
you-
that technology. Yeah, you're right.
Do you remember? You remember that? Whatever
I do
BFA
remember that
launched,
now.
the chest,
The weekly
like,
box,
you
the
did
M
it-
plus box.
Yeah,
Yeah.
If you did a key at the last week of Legion, you just got loot in that cache.
Yeah, you had like
Yeah.
a monster piece of loot. and
Yeah,
then
I
it was
remember
25
people-
key.
Putting it in void storage, hoping that would make it dodge the revert that they knew was coming.
Well, it did.
Yeah.
You just didn't need void storage.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, that's beyond me then. Maybe whoever had that script for their database just doesn't work there anymore or something. Who knows?
It's always kind of inconsistent with things like that, like whether or not there will actually be a rollback.
Next
Alright.
time I hear about something like that, I'm abusing it.
Well, that's not a good decision for you. Like you don't want to get on Blizzard's bad side. It's a good decision for like non-content creators, but
I won't talk about it.
okay. Fair enough.
Crazy thought. I just won't say
Yeah.
anything.
All right, I'm refreshing your armory every day. If I see anything weird going
Yep.
on there, I'm writing a report.
Write a report on how I'm low rolling my gear.
I'm calling the police department. All right, Trell, what is your tip of the week?
I had a lot of good ones this week, but I settled on one. And this is the add-on called By the Way Quest. It's just BTW Quest. If you download that, you can see all unfinished quests on the map. And even if they're not on the map for whatever reason, it'll list them in each zone for you and on the add-on menu. And so you can see like where all the side quests are if you're trying to do Lore Master or just get all the rep, because each quest gives you a bunch of rep for whatever faction.
Mm-hmm.
And I even started doing this on my main. I hardly ever do side quests, but this has been really helpful for just tracking them all down.
Yeah, this is so you don't want daily reset world quest, but when you've done all the world quests on your map, you're going and hunting down side quests just to get even more of a hit of the joy of questing. I don't know.
Well, for me personally, it was after I leveled 5 characters, I kind of got bored of leveling. So then I actually did some extra activities on my main.
Yeah, that's fair. All right, Tuttles, what's our clip of the week here? We've got
All right, I changed my clip of the week to a tip of the week.
okay, cool.
I got a nice item. I've only ever seen this rare one time, and the one time I killed it, he dropped this item, and as you may notice, it does not have stamina. And similar to the Nullhide belt, this item does not have stamina because it has 3 secondary stats. I've only ever seen this rare one time, and I got this piece of loot off of him. It is
okay.
a one-handed strength mace.
It's Fenran in Thaldraszus. This
Yeah.
a Titan Watcher guy. Okay.
Oh, I've
Okay.
never seen it.
Yeah, what item level did this drop for you at?
372. It's still in my bag. It's not fixed yet.
Okay. Yeah, so it is, as you mentioned here, like the Nullhide belt, which was a leather belt that didn't have, they fixed it. They fixed that one, but it didn't have stamina. It had an extra secondary instead.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That
that's the
item
belt
would
that
have been,
Dragnos was
it would have
keeping
been
secret
Biss.
from last week's podcast.
It would have been Biss through at least Heroic of next tier. That thing would have been Biss.
Well, this is a weapon, so you...
It's less good for that reason, though, because the item level on the weapons is weapon DPS, and that's very valuable. So if they don't fix this, even still, it'll probably get outclassed by like a 390 instead of a 450 like the Nullhide belt would have. But I guess it maybe depends on which
it's
spec
still
you're
good.
playing. Yeah, this thing is... Oh, it's definitely still Biss right now. If you can get your hands on one of these, you're a strength user. That thing is
definitely
Biss.
still miss right now.
That being
I
said,
have one.
good chance Blizzard Entertainment will fix this one. They fixed the plate agility chest that was dropping. There was a plate chest
yeah.
piece that was dropping with agility on it.
Last time I checked, there was no plate agi users.
Yeah, not since Classic. Yeah.
Yeah, I think all these bugs are so funny.
Yeah.
They're just witnessing so many of their mechanics in their own game get finished and live time. And it's just nothing beats that.
Yeah. It is wild as well because like items are so standardized right now, right? It's like every item has the same item level has the same amount of primary stamina and secondary total, right? And then
Yeah.
like you just show what happens if you mess with that formula a little bit. Items are super Biss. Yeah, that's funny.
Oh, this is extremely unnecessary. But did you guys know that usually items of the same stat numbers total, there's usually one item that has one more total stat than others, like on
Yeah.
rings.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I guess of rounding up or something. I don't know how it happens, but I
Yeah,
always thought that was funny.
that is funny. As item level changes, there can be a ring that's like one has one more haste than the other one, and then 3 item levels later, it's like, okay, now the other one has one more verse than the other one. That's weird.
Hmm.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to talking about our raid predictions. Tettles, I think a lot of these are yours. You wanna make the first?
Well, some of these are mine. Some of these I sourced from other people.
Okay, cool. You wanna lob the first take?
I think that there will be 8 melee on Razageth. The first time we will see 8 melee on an in-boss kill in a very long time.
Let me go check the history books and see when the last time that happened was.
So-
Why do you think that'll happen?
So here's the deal with. Okay, so first off, it is hard to slot in this many melee just generally. So seeing this many would be pretty unprecedented. Not only that, but melee run into issues where there are melee healers that also take up slots from them, like Holy Paladins and Mistweaver Monks. But melee the amount of DPS that some of these melee specs are doing right now is very, very high.
All right. The last time we had 8 melee, I believe, was Gul'dan. Was the
Yeah.
last fight where Exorcist
Checks out.
played. They played 3 rogues, 2 warriors, a Ret Pally, a DH, a DK, and had 8 melee in on that encounter. Yeah,
This tier just feels like. Do you guys remember Uldir?
yeah.
Uldyr's more recent
yeah.
than Nighthold, at least for me. It kind of feels like Uldyr and Nighthold-esque, where it's like melee are just absolutely blasting, and I think that it's more equitable to Uldyr because some of the fights aren't that great for melee, but I think that like at the damage disparity, you're probably still going to see a lot more melee.
Uldir, yeah. Gahoon only had 5 melee DPS.
Yeah, but I guessed 1 through 5 were all melee.
Yeah, I think you might be right on that one. That one also
It's
had
hard for me
the
to
4 warlock requirement. Good.
It's hard for me to tell like if melee or range is going to be favored in a lot of these fights because we don't know like the worked out strats yet. You know, like
Yeah.
usually strats will come out first that solve ranged movement issues, and then you kind of figure out what to do with melee after that. But like all the movement on say Senarth, the ice spider fight where you climb up the ice staircase the entire time, that looks like hell for range. But I feel like there's got to be some way to make it bearable for
I
all the
think that,
range
like,
players. So
I think that Broodkeeper might be potentially annoying for melee, depending on like what the. I think that like that one would be like a strategy dependent one relative to like are melee going to be incentivized or not, just kind of like what you end up doing with your range versus your melee on that fight.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
Razageth, we still don't know a whole lot about, but definitely looking through the dungeon journal, it doesn't seem like there's an awful lot that's like horrific for melee.
Until they drop a big puddle in the middle of the room.
Yeah, we'll see. All right. I guess let's do tank meta is the next thing we talk about. You have written here tank meta will be Prot Warrior plus Vengeance Demon Hunter. I actually think it's going to be Prot Warrior and maybe Brew. Maybe
Brew?
DK.
You think that's where you're getting your Mystic Touch buff
Really?
from? Is Brewmaster?
I think maybe, yeah. I'm a little bit less high on Mistweaver than I think Windwalker's good too. Like I think Windwalkers will be common, but I don't know. I think
Brew's
DK
not
is
able to
like
tank-
Warrior DK is also a compelling combo.
Okay,
like-
so hear me out. I don't think Brewmaster's able to tank Razageth.
Maybe, yeah. I don't know.
So-
The EHP buff they got recently though, like that's a lot of EHP. Like if your healers can keep you alive.
Razageth has a mechanic where it does AoE damage relative to the amount of magic damage that you're taking from a specific hit. And I don't expect Brewmaster to be particularly strong versus that.
well, it depends
Yeah.
how often it happens.
I
And,
mean, they
like,
have-
if one tank has to take several in a row.
Because they have dampen,
guess.
diffuse, that they can cycle between those, right? Like
Zen med.
dampen, diffuse, Zen Med, yeah. Like and Celestial Brew as well, presumably will reduce the damage of it too. So
And four brew. They actually have 5 huge defensives, which is
Yeah.
insane for like really, really big magic hits. But if there's consistent magic damage, then they're by far the worst tank.
yeah. I don't know. I'm kind of I think Brew, especially like it just does so much damn. Does so much damn.
I don't
Yeah.
know. It's hard to say because all the tanks are pretty strong.
Yeah.
Honestly, they've all been tuned up, and Brew got 2 buffs to kind of catch it up a little bit. It's really hard to say. I personally think that the tank meta will just end up being like it always is, where they just fill whatever raid buffs are needed.
Which, I mean, that's why Prot Warrior's seeming like one of the overwhelming favorites coming into the tiers, because DPS Warriors look like they're a little bit in the bin for raid.
Yeah, a lot of people. Although again, you know, we've been saying that a lot, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it'll be true, right? Like that.
They seemed like in raid testing they weren't great. Now,
yeah.
Are they going to be brought? Maybe. Like it's not something that's always set in stone.
Just like if you're listening to this, make sure that you don't take us saying that like 5 different times in 5 different videos in the same way that you would take like 5 different good players all saying that, right? Like that's it's a little bit less reliable information than that, but yeah, that does still line up with my expectation. Yeah.
Don't you think the Warrior would still be brought, even if it's a little subpar overall, as a DPS, just because of the execute value? Like Warrior's always good for execute, right?
Well, Sinrogue is better execute now, right? And even Unholy, but I'm not sure you played Unholy, but I don't know.
It seemed like
Unholy is nuts, yeah.
An extra rally is cool though. Rallies are.
It seemed like
good.
Arms only did competitive damage inside of execute. Was the problem?
Yeah, I think the Prot Warrior is a very likely tank if we're at all right about DPS Warrior being kind of subpar and being something that guilds will at least want to have the option to slot out on fights. The Vengeance Demon Hunter slot though, like I don't know, you definitely will never need them for the buff, right? Like Havoc is going to be in, we think, on pretty much every fight, even after being nerfed for the last 3 weeks.
Yeah.
In which case you're just playing it as like a solid tank, but it doesn't have much utility, right? Like, I mean, okay, it's got sigils for Dathia or something going on the platforms. That's kind of cool. But other than that, it's just kind of there to do good damage and be reasonably tanky. But like, is that better than having Death Grips, AMS, AMZ? Is that better than having like Mystic Touch if you want to be able to sit your other monk and
it comes down to Razageth, because they would be the tank that's taking the magic damage hit that's like the explosion magic damage hit, right?
Yeah.
Like you would rotate between Spell Reflect and then the Vengeance Demon Hunter taking the other ones.
Yeah, I mean, Vengeance Demon Hunter is good against that if it happens very often, but again, if it's happening not that often, like they're not that much.
They're also
like you kind of want to absorb shield tank against that. If that works,
it's actually better than.
But
yeah,
that's actually a really interesting decision. Like once we actually see Razageth and how it works, like some tanks will they're just like so polar about what they're good against, which damage profiles for magic damage, and even Pro Warrior is insanely good against magic damage now. It's just so tanky.
Mm-hmm.
All right, next prediction here. It says Mistweaver will be seen on every boss kill. Is this a you prediction, or are you hearing this from somebody else?
I was honestly just writing stuff down.
Okay.
I do think that the Mistweaver buffs made them fairly compelling options to be the Mystic Touch bringer. I don't know if they're more compelling than necessarily bringing a Windwalker monk on every single fight. Like I think it's just weird because like I don't actually believe that this will be true, but I do think that it is something that we absolutely could see. It seems like guilds are, at least Race World First guilds, are not leveling Resto Shaman, and they're leveling basically every other healer except for Resto Shaman.
Yeah.
And I could see I could see them kind of like show up and play Mistweaver on a lot of fights.
For me, it's like, oh man, between Preservation Evoker, Holy Paladin, and Healing Priest, like I feel like those 3 are pretty likely to be in on every kill, and then like the 4th or 5th slots being duplicates of one of them also seems pretty likely to me. But
okay.
Yeah, Resto Druid and Mistweaver also seem good, but I don't think every boss kill will feature them.
I think it also as a Windwalker player, I think it's hard to not to say that anything is better than Windwalker on the monk spec, because Windwalker is so strong in every damage profile right now, and it's very, very tanky too. And it can immune everything on Sinarth. Not that really has to do with the last boss, but assuming that last boss has some kind of like knockback or something, Windwalker's always good at that too, you know.
Velo is a Mistweaver main, right?
That's true.
So, I don't know.
But
with Ryson retiring and Velo being a Mistweaver main, right?
Yeah, but I think he's good enough that they'll just have him play whatever's good rather than making that make Mistweaver much more likely to be played. Maybe it's really close.
I don't know if whatever we'll see. It's impossible to tell.
All right, the next prediction here.
5 Resto Shamans that just didn't stream any of the Shamans leveling.
That'd be so funny. Yeah. Next one here says, Raid will be unbelievably undertuned. No boss over 200 pulls. Razageth only boss over 100 pulls. And 5 bosses die in the first 12 hours of the raid being unlocked. These, I think, are not hot takes. They're fairly common takes among people right now.
Kalamazzi said this.
Okay, yeah. This is sourced directly from him.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I I do think it's somewhat likely. Okay, so here's my counter argument to this. Here's the argument for this is pretty obvious, right? It's like, okay, Sepulchre was way too hard. This time around, they're gonna make it less hard. The bosses and stuff, like, they're not gonna have them be that hard. The counter argument to this is we're coming into this raid on day one. We're gonna be on level 380. The mythic bosses drop 420 gear. That is very
415.
funny number. And well, 415 for the early bosses, right? 421, 424 from the end bosses. But besides being a funny number, that's just 40 item levels above how much item level we have going into it. When you compare that to stuff like Sepulchre, Sepulchre, we came in and we were like, what, 10 item levels lower than the raid on Mythic when Mythic Week started, and then by the end of the first week of Mythic, we were at basically Mythic item level, and we stayed there for the next several weeks. So for that reason, Sepulchre was like really absolutely hard, and it was relatively hard, right? Because we were at the same item level that we would be for the whole time. This time around, I do think there's a very good chance that the absolute difficulty of the raid is going to be pretty low, but relative to our gear is going to be hot garbage for the first week compared to the raid difficulty.
Okay.
Now, there will be some guilds that will spend the first few days turbo farming with splits and stuff, and they will be able to acquire an awful lot of item levels very quickly from doing that. But the guilds that don't do that, I think there's a good chance that a boss like Razageth drops item level 424 loot. It might be pretty easy at item level 415 loot, equipped, right? Like that boss might be a relatively easy end boss at that level, but that doesn't mean it would be easy at eye level 400, which is probably what people would be trying to pull it at next week. So I suspect that because of how much gearing is going to be involved here, the raid will feel pretty hard for the first week or two, even if it then ends up being like a very easy farm.
Well, I think that's also fairly reasonable. But I do also like just looking at how it was during testing and how optimized these Race to World First guilds are these days. It seems like it's a situation where it's like it's just a matter of time before they get enough gear. I wouldn't even be shocked if they only end up needing to spend like 8 hours like gearing out characters via heroic, because they run 2 or 3 simultaneous raids, right? Like they do
Probably
like
more this time if you can.
but they run simultaneous raids and do like splits and stuff like that for tier and whatnot, and they get after it.
That depends though on like how hard is splitting heroic Vault of the Incarnates, right? Like heroic Vault of the Incarnates is also dropping eye level 400 plus stuff, and people will be going in there at eye level 380, right? Like that. Can you do a split like that with 4 mains and 26 helpers? Because if you can, like if that's not hard, then yeah, you can gear fast. You can gear real fast that way. But if you can't, then like if you need it to be like 4 mains, 11 good guild alts, 15 helpers, right? Then you can only run 2 splits at once, right? But if you could run 4 and 26, then you can run 7 splits at once and get out of there real quick.
I was not expecting there to actually be a lot of helpers. Now that you say that, maybe that.
Oh, the helpers are going to be in force. That's going to be hugely valuable. As many as you can fit in.
They're paying for those.
Yeah, it's like a couple 100K each for coming and helping in a heroic raid, and it's a good deal as well because you also get your Great Vault filled too on characters that otherwise maybe wouldn't be doing heroic at all. But yeah, I don't know. There's competing perspectives about how this raid's going to look. I suspect it will be like 2 to 3 days of splits, and then still reasonably hard on the first week, even if then on week 3 it's like, okay, these bosses are quite easy. The DPS checks are not tight at that point. Because I think that was the big thing about Sepulchre, was that we did not, like, week 3 Sepulchre, or the first one's characters, were not substantially more powerful than week 8 Sepulchre, the first one's characters. Like, we were pretty much full build after we got that double Lego on the 3rd week. That is not going to be the case this time. This time every week we're getting more gear.
True. How long do you guys think this raid's gonna last? How many days?
9.
I was thinking 6.
I was thinking 6 too.
Okay.
You think 9? Really?
Yeah, I think so.
I was not.
The gear process, I guess, that you mentioned. Yeah.
I think it lives through the reset. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it'll depend. It kind of depends on like if bosses like Dathia, Kurog, Broodkeeper, if those end up being like 10 pull bosses or 50 or 100 pull bosses. That's going to be an important thing for like if Razageth can die in the first week. I don't know. The next take we have here, in fact, is more guilds will get walled at Dathia and Kurog than expected. Is this your take, Tettles, or is this sourced from...
This is sourced from somebody else.
Okay. Yeah, Kurog is like the most full dungeon journal I've ever seen in my life for a mid-tier boss. That boss has so many mechanics. That's crazy.
Squishy was saying that he was doing some graphics for Kurog, and he just ended up chalking it down to whenever the boss is in different sections, they do different mechanics. He's just like, dude, it is too long to write exactly about what they do.
Yeah.
It's I think the Dathia one, they explained this to me, is they thought that Dathia during testing, the amount of outcoming damage was very high, and like we haven't seen it since like the HP change, and so it's one of those situations that like it's also like a dance fight. Like once you get the dance down, you get the movement down well, it becomes a lot easier. But at the same point, the survivability checks whenever you're holding that debuff for a very long time, if you're not able to get it cleared off because you need to hold it to summon the ad later, it can become problematic, or you need to like reset the debuff and stuff like that. It can become a problem. Was kind of the reason that Dathia was obviously on the list for potentially more difficult than expected, rather.
Broodkeeper, on the other hand, the take here is will be very complicated to explain, but incredibly easy to execute. I actually think this is pretty likely to be true. Like the tank driving Broodkeeper might have a kind of tough job, and the tank picking up ads might also, like, that might be kind of a challenging tank encounter for doing those quickly, correctly, early in progression. But for pretty much everybody else, yeah, I suspect it's going to be like, it's not going to be one of these cases where it's like, oh my god, there's 48 different eggs. How do we sequence where we're going to break them? It's like, okay,
yeah,
we're going to watch this YouTube video of of Race to World First Guild versus Broodkeeper Diurna, and then we are going to walk where those guys walked. And the same thing's going to happen.
That's what I wrote down. That's why I wrote this down, because I'm pretty sure that like once you see a guild do it one time, you're like, damn, that's really simple. You just copy exactly what they do.
Even from testing, even from an hour of testing, like it's pretty intuitive how to you can kind of like even just look at the room, and there's a couple of different like obvious routes of moving the boss that would maybe make sense.
There's so much like shit going on. It's like, again, complicated to explain, but it's like it's one of those things that the margin of error felt so high during testing.
Yeah, we'll see.
Like,
that it's tuning.
Yeah, obviously it's tuning based though.
That room was massive in testing. Like I remember just running a mile to get to the next
Yeah.
attack.
I'm really interested to see like what strategies people come up with for how they have their ranged and their melee set up, and like how they prioritize. Like, are you going to prioritize? Are you going to like overkill ads? Are you going to look to hit the boss a lot more with more of your damage? Like, what is the split going to look like in that front?
All right. We have a take from Twitch chat here from Forlis, who says healing change will probably make gear scaling way more important for stamina and survivability. I actually have an addendum to this, which is DPS characters Leech will be a more valuable tertiary than it was the previous times around as well, because usually you just want avoidance to be able to live one shots, but if your health bar is now a valuable resource and it's not always full up, Leech starts to actually get a lot of value on DPS characters too. So I think both those things are likely to be true.
Really? I wouldn't say that Leech would be any better, because the damage taken is still the same relative to your health pool, right?
Yeah, but if the heal, like if external healing is less good, right? And it's like, so your health bar is now sitting at 60%, then you've got something good to leech into, right? Whereas if your health bar is not sitting at 60%, like if your health bar is topped, then all that can help you survive is avoidance.
I think that mana looks pretty concerning for a lot of
leech
healers.
helps that too.
Especially after the change to HP pools, it seems like mana may be a bit more of a concern. I don't know how the throughput healing is going to be. If the throughput healing is concerned on a lot of the fights, that'd be really tough.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I think avoidance is still more damage reduction, less healing required in general over Leech, especially on single target. But a lot of these fights do have ads too, and Leech is very valuable when there's multiple targets to leech off of. So could be right.
Yeah, we'll see. It's I think it will be more valuable than it was last year. I'm not sure if it's more valuable than avoidance to gem and enchant for or whatever, or to enchant for, but maybe. I don't know. I think it might be. Speed also always a compelling option as well, like speed on fights like like Broodkeeper and Dathia and
Right, true.
Senarth. Like, oh my god, there's so much walking.
There's even a speed file you could
Yeah.
wear.
That's true. There's a gathering speed file as well, too. So there's all kinds of different files. You could get any stat you want.
Maybe wear a perception file for Broodkeeper.
Yeah, finesse, deftness, all kinds of whatever you want. Cool system. I love it. Anyways, those are just some of our takes and predictions for the upcoming Vault of the Incarnates raid. We have a couple of Q&A questions, but first, we get to thank our supporters over on the Patreon and wish them happy holidays as well, because it's likely to be the last thing you'll hear from us until after the, I don't know, maybe the end of December, maybe start of January, we'll see. But yeah, so a big warm festive thanks to Paul, What the Duck, Why Did They Make Me Murder My Duck Friends, Never Nude, Ja, Dratnus' Dino Pillow, Chromed, Trekkie, Chewy. Imagine not learning dragon riding yet because you're busy gathering duck feathers and the game cued you into Nako defensive. The Duck Daily was up today as well, the Duck War Mode Daily. You guys do that yet today? It's good times.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
No, it didn't offer me anything that was compelling.
I think I had Primal Chaos for me. I love Primal Chaos. Maybe it didn't. Yeah.
That would be compelling. Wait a second.
You need 300 of those pretty quick.
Yeah. ZivXX, Salty Senny, Necris, Sinmora, Tankdill, Nevuk, Eevee Survival Main, No Trick, I Forgot I Was Sub Tier, Dymat, Lufer, Rework Mistweaver, Dragonflight and Chill, Nyx, Duck Gaming, Gallic, Brusif, Dratnos Routes Abyss. Like and subscribe if Dratnos mispronounced Nokud this week. What is it? Nokud?
It's Nokud.
Nokud. Pepe Laugh Tea Time, M Sanity, Xena. Rogue's now good enough for prog, still bad enough to be sat for SLG, bless up. Red Color, youtube.com/workbringer, Alphabet Soup, Druid Friends of Evolved Gaming, #1 Simsky Fratelski. Lurka isn't concerned about this Winds of Winter buff that you talk about because he had the wisdom to plan a trip back to Australia for the NA Winter. Milk. Sife, Pone, Windwalker Mugsteel with nerfs by rolling with the punches. Due to Sims with 4-piece, Skelly will be going back to Elemental from Enhance. PI for sale, I have crafting to level. The Marsh Hare, Veil Strider Svar. Patreon tip of the week. In order to min-max Court of Stars buffs, reroll to a Gnome Holy Paladin with Cooking, Enchanting, and one of Alchemy, Leatherworking, Blacksmithing, or Herbalism to get the access to the most buffs possible in that dungeon. Big Head Small Brain, Narnar TV is back and ready to press Starfall. Agitar, Juniper, Vivoker pro tip, while in Drakthir form, if you use your Headless Horseman's Hearthstone, you look really pog. And Unconditioned Love and Deep Friendship with Nox. Also, Nox, reroll DH, please, and thanks. Thanks all for the support.
That was a lot of duck names.
That was a lot of duck names. They've been on a duck thing recently, the patrons.
They're quacking up the wrong tree.
Yeah. All right, our first question comes from Clams in Discord, who says, with M+ right around the corner, and you've all been doing tank healer and DPS tier list, what would be your top 5 M+ comps you'd want to have in a key? Or what do we think the high end meta comps will be? Speculation is fun to look back on. That is, indeed it is. So,
good question.
Looking at M+ comps, to me, kind of one of the core questions is, where is your bloodlust coming from? The answer to that, Preservation Evoker seems like a good answer to that. Failing that, though, you're looking then at something like Magician or a Shaman in the DPS spots, something like that.
Or Devastation.
Yeah, Devastation Evoker as well. So if you want to play like a Resto Druid, then maybe you play one of those in your DPS spots. The Battle Res looks fairly easy to find. You can find that with like a tank DK, a tank Druid, a tank Paladin, Engineers. Yeah, although Engineers...
Engineers is weird. You have to have the engineering piece on.
Yeah. So that's not going to be something that raiding characters will probably craft early, but long term be able to do that if you're an M+ character.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the Havoc Outlaw demo, Preservation, and then like a good tank, it seems like kind of a likely comp to be.
Yeah, I think it's Prot Warrior right now.
Yeah, to be kind of cranking. But
Vinge does seem decent though, right?
Blood Decay too. I mean, whew.
I mean, every tank's good, right?
Yeah.
Except maybe Brute, but Prot Warrior is unkillable. Like it is, the mitigation is insane when you're gonna get past +20s on fort and above. You'll see it's gonna be crazy if they don't nerf it.
What's up with Yoda and Drogo saying that Prot Pally is like being slept on super hard and it's actually gonna be one of the top tier tanks? What's the deal with that?
So Prop
tank is
Pally might
good.
be up there now. I mean, it was already pretty good. They had insane defensives, but the biggest defensive Sentinel was bugged the entire beta until live. So we didn't really ever get to see that. But they also got a huge buff last week as well. So they could be up there now, to be honest.
Yeah, they have like bubble taunt every 2 minutes. They have Sentinel every minute. They have Eye of Tear every minute. They got Ardent Defender.
Mhm.
They got Guardian of Kings. They got Guardian of Kings auto procking every like 45 seconds or something.
Yep.
That's a lot of stuff there for them.
So they're also one of the highest damages in keys, right?
Yeah, the damage like
Yeah, they do a lot of damage.
on
sure.
pull like Sentinel, Divine Toll, Eye of Tear is huge burst and very very good. Like those globals are all doing something for you defensively too.
Even
which
with
is
that
very
being the
cool.
case, you still think that Prot Warrior is going to be consistently like not that Prot Pally is necessarily bad, but Prot Warrior is going to be the consistent pick.
Yeah, even though like all the signs say like Prop Pally is super OP, I still feel like Prop Warrior is overall sturdier and just a safer pick. It's
Okay.
got some really good talent options too that you can take like an AoE silence on a warrior for the first time. That's nuts.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
Spell block for those magic damage intensive dungeons. Yeah.
Mhm.
There's some really good stuff in there. I don't know. I think DK looks really good as well. So honestly, like my top 5 favorite M plus comps, it's probably Preservation, Havoc, Outlaw, Demo, and then like 5 different tanks. Like all 5 different tanks that maybe aren't like the 5 different tanks that aren't Brew or something would be my
Okay.
top 5 favorite M plus comps to play.
So then, just to give counterpoint, then the rest of Druid would probably be like a Prot Warrior, like one of the tanks basically with a Prot Warrior, rest of Druid, and then you'd probably pay a Mage. I think that Mage is just the easiest to slot in, and then it's like Havoc, Outlaw, Rogue.
Yeah, something like that you could do, or Devastation as well.
Yeah. I think Windwalker might need an honorable mention too.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know how it's going to scale though. Is the problem.
It just seems worse than like as weird as it sounds. It just seems worse than Havoc and Outlaw, right?
Yeah, I mean, in M0s right
Yeah.
now, it seems insane with Fatal Flying Guillotine and mobs having as much health as you do. But like an M plus, that's going to be a lot less sick, right?
Well, I mean, Windwalkers could beat rogues up to plus 20s on beta. If like I never saw like enough data to really say that across the board, but I think they could compete pretty well with rogues. I don't know about Havoc. Havoc's just insane. But
I mean, the Fodder to the Flames nerf is actually somewhere in the realm of like 5% from what I was seeing. People saying.
overall damage loss
Yeah, apparently
or single target.
they were just saying. I think it's saying overall
Yeah.
damage loss.
Well, because it's a loss for both, right? Because you lose the
Yeah.
fodder explosion, and you also lose uptime on Demon Soul over the course of the dungeon. Yeah.
That's true.
It
Yeah.
was nerfed to both. It was about 5% to both, is what it was saying. I mean, them changing it to not be hasted is actually kind of considerable. It seemed like.
All right, next question comes from Undad TV, friend of the show in Discord, who says, "Is kill these specific mobs to spawn a boss an objectively bad mechanic for Mythic Plus, or am I just specifically tilted about this very specific thing? If it is generally bad, how can it be executed well? How did this mechanic end up on seemingly every boss in this expansion? Does it even matter outside of rank 1 level keys? What if Pigman in Waycrest required killing his room's trash to spawn him? Would I have made it through BFA?" I guess a good example is
Yeah.
like Noku Defensive, right? Every single boss in Noku Defensive, except for the last boss, it's like, okay, you have to kill these 3 mobs to spawn it. You have to kill these 4 mobs to spawn it, right?
Second boss in Ruby Life Pools.
Ruby
Yeah,
Life
second
Pools,
boss for Life
yeah.
Pools.
Last boss on Ruby Life Pools.
Yeah,
Algathar Academy. Although that's not
Yeah.
nearly as
that one should
limited.
kill the whole room. But I guess it's similar. Yeah,
I think the problem lies where there's an open dungeon, quote unquote, but then every single boss is gated behind required packs.
There's
like
mandatory
Nokud
trash.
looks like like Nokud is clearly like a very, very open dungeon, but then you don't have any option really except for just how to get the extra 40% trash that's not required. And that's it.
Would Halls of Atonement would have been a better dungeon if you didn't have mandatory shards, right? Like almost, it's like it is a better dungeon if the shards are not required, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. I would have enjoyed it a lot more.
yeah.
I
I don't
don't know,
know.
it's-
I kind of like the shard. I think the shards are better than like the 3 ballista stuff or like the 4 spirit collar stuff in Nokud. I guess they just don't want people like doing boss in M0, right? Like, so they want to require you to kill the trash in
If they're
those difficulties or
designing,
something. I don't know.
my general thought process though is like if they're designing that based around M0, it's like I think I'm gonna have a problem. I don't know. So I guess back to the question is like, are kill these specific mobs to spawn a boss a bad mechanic for N+.
I think in general, no, but I think in open dungeons or what is perceived as an open dungeon, it should not be a thing, in my opinion.
I think I prefer the Brackenhide first boss thing where it's like, okay, obviously Brackenhide, there's a lot of stuff I don't like in there, but like the whole thing where it's like open any 5 cages out of these
Yeah.
options. I think that's
Yeah,
like
that's
a
a good
cooler
point.
way where it's like, okay, you have to do something to spawn the boss, but you have some options about how you want to do it. Because yeah, like in Nokud, it's like, okay, you literally have to pull these exact packs every single time you do this dungeon, right?
I do think it's overused right now, though.
Yeah, it is a very common
Yeah.
trope
Oh,
of
yeah.
these dungeons. That is true. Yeah, it's an interesting
I
question.
do like the Brackenhide example though, because that's a good compromise where you still have the same kind of requirement, but there's a lot of different ways you can do it, and you can add mobs to those polls as well. Whereas Nakud is like single pack, travel a mile, single pack.
Yeah.
You know,
See,
like you can't combine those as easily.
that's part of my problem too. It's like not being able to combine trash into bosses. Like,
Well, you still
I
can
don't
pull
like-
trash onto bosses in Nokud, right? You just have to like, it has to be not the ones that spawn the boss.
Exactly. It has to be not the trash packs that spawn the boss. And I think that like limiting the ability. I think that pulling trash into bosses like is very seldomly done just by mini groups because it's like obviously like a lot harder. But I think that like I don't think that it should be discouraged. Like I think it's something that's cool. Like pulling trash into bosses, like
Yeah,
I
having
like
the
pulling
option
trash
to
into
do a
bosses.
more challenging boss fight is very cool. I've always loved that.
Because like the last boss in Nokud, you can technically pull those stags into the boss if you really want to.
Yeah,
They're gonna
Yeah.
kind of beat your ass. You could.
the like the daughter and the son of the con into
Yeah.
I've been doing that in M0s. It's been fun.
Well,
Um,
and
We'll
plus
see.
they'll kind of beat your ass, but I mean you could.
We'll see how high up we go before we stop doing that in the old Keystone.
+6.
Yeah,
I don't think it would be that bad. You just have to have an interrupt rotation on the one
blood
centaur. and
curdling.
then
Yeah,
As
Don't
long
they
as they
do-
die before P2, you're good, I think.
Don't they do a lot of tank damage?
yeah, but tanks
Oh, I don't know.
tanks do a lot of tanking. It's
Can't remember if they do.
the boss does a lot of tank damage as well. If you're the way the boss
Oh,
works
it's
with the like
boss.
the double slash combo, that thing does a lot of damage.
Yeah, the boss does truck.
Yeah.
Okay.
But if you defensive correctly against that, it's not too bad. Anyway, I think that's going to be it for our show this week. Hope everybody's enjoyed this episode. We will be back in 2 to 4 weeks with the next episode, probably. So stay tuned for that. Hope everybody has a nice Race to World First, nice holiday break, whatever you're up to over the next month. And yeah, we'll see you when we see you. Later.
Have fun in season 1. Bye.
Goodbye.